cause to use violence against you.
Peter Burgell went to hear Ammon speak on one of Ammon's many lengthy speaking tours.
My fiancée went with me, and so we listened to Ammon, and he was, I thought, one of the more inspiring people that I have ever met in my life. Probably, I would still say that. And he told about all the adventures that he'd had and things that he'd done, both in terms of nonviolence and just in terms of an amazingly adventurous style of living, and how consistent he had been about the pacifism and the anarchism, and how he made the connection between the two, and then somehow rolled that all up with Catholicism as well, which I didn't understand. I wasn't particularly interested in trying Catholicism, but I was very interested in the connection, in the nexus there between pacifism and anarchism. And so he had quite an effect on my life.
A lot of young people come to us. It's a pacifist anarchist movement. And they come to us to learn more about this point of view of beginning a change from the bottom up rather than from the top down.
Dorothy used the term anarchist and anarchism, not anarchy. And she was a great follower of Kropotkin. And most of the people who came to the work were of a religious bent, you know. And they were, I think, put off by this anarchism. And I'd say, but Dorothy, they don't know what you mean. And she said, well, I mean the anarchism of Kropotkin, mutual aid and, you know, all that. I said, but they never heard of that. Well, she tried to sell the ideas without pressing too hard on anarchism.
I went to jail with Ammon Hennacy and Dorothy Day for 30 days. I was 20 years old the day I met them. Dorothy just said to me, we plead guilty and we don't take bail. Ammon Hennacy and Dorothy Day were influenced by the industrial workers of the world, the labor movement at the turn of the 20th century, which was also based on building a different economic society in which workers had control of their own industries, the one big industrial union.
While he was in prison, he became a Christian because he had only the Bible to read, and he read the Sermon on the Mount, probably read it many, many, many times, memorized it.
But he was not intimidated. And I know that he went into solitary confinement for 9 months. And at some point there was light, because the only thing he had to read was the Bible. And he read it from cover to cover. And he was converted at that time, as a young man, to Christianity, but not to Catholicism, not to any sect or religion, but to Jesus Christ, and to the nonviolent Jesus Christ, who said, love your enemies, turn the other cheek, and resist not the evildoer. And Ammon was good at that. He could resist the evil and still love the person and still rejoice in the person. And I think he did that all his life.
On Thanksgiving Day in 1949, Ammon Hennacy wrote this poem.
Love without courage and wisdom
is sentimentality.
As with the ordinary church member.
Courage without love and wisdom
is foolhardiness.
As with the ordinary soldier.
Wisdom without love and courage
is cowardice.
As with the ordinary intellectual.
Therefore, one who has love, courage, and wisdom
is one in a million who moves the world.
As with Jesus, Buddha, and Gandhi, and Dorothy Day.
Anarchism, philosophically, is a noble thing. It's a good thing. St. John of the Cross says we must be free from every kind of attachment. not only worldly attachments, but even spiritual attachments. That can be a real distraction from true spirituality. He says, and here, there is no way as for the just person, there is no law. Yeah. There is no law. If you've reached a certain level of justice and holiness, spirituality, there's no more law. There's no law. That's anarchism in its perfect form.
Ammon Hennacy was born in 1893, Dorothy Day in 1897. So Ammon Hennacy was 20 years old in 1913. They didn't even know there was going to be a world war. So to them, the influences on their youth, it was the class war, the war between workers and capitalism for the control of people's work. So Ammon Hennacy and Dorothy Day, the great influences that made radicals out of them, were the Haymarket martyrs who were hung. The case of Sacco and Vanzetti, the anarchists who were again framed, and these were the radicalizing influences on Ammon Hennacy and Dorothy Day and the people of that World War I generation of resistors and radicals. Now they passed on the vision to this wonderful generation of that tiny group of people who resisted participation in World War II.
I'm an anarchist myself. I always stood for pacifism.
At the time of the Korean War and just before the Vietnam War, we were growing up. Our radical vision was formed by that generation of World War II resistors.
It was Ammon's idea to have a sit-down strike against the air raid drills. When the air raid whistle blow, you're supposed to get off the street for 15, 20 minutes. He says, we're going to go out and sit in the park.
It was a genius idea. He said, Dorothy, I'm not going to play that war game. That's a psychological preparation for war. It has nothing to do with defense. It's a lie. I'm going to sit in the park. Hoping, of course, that Dorothy would say, I'll sit with you, which she, of course, did. Then he walked a few blocks away to the War Resisters League, where we had old friends, and he told the War Resisters League what he wanted to do.
Civil defense here in this city was destroyed not by Dorothy Day, but in a sense by those of us at the WRL who came after Dorothy Day, who saw what she had done and said, let's organize a lot of people to oppose the civil defense rules, and we did. We got 1,000 people out one year, and they arrested 50 of them, and we got 2,000 the next year. They arrested 100 of them, and that was the last year they had any civil defense drills, because we had organized 2,000 people to go down to City Hall Park. Dorothy didn't do that. She was witnessing, and her witness moved me. And I'm a political person, and I organized it into a framework that others could take part in.
The idea that New York State was projecting at the time was that we should practice defense against nuclear war. We were supposed to be in the basements and inside the high-rise buildings in New York City practicing hiding under tables to protect ourselves from a nuclear attack.
So there's a dialectic between Dorothy as a saint who's witnessing and myself as a Marxist bureaucratic politician who tries to organize around that. And both have their value. That is, both have a place. My tendency is to think the world can be changed, but only if you accept the value both of Ammon Hennacy and the people like myself who are not nearly as saintly as Ammon.
We need to put our bodies across the line. As a part of this movement to close the School of the Americas, we've had a time-honored tradition of using civil disobedience, where people are willing to take a personal responsibility for how their tax dollars are used and cross the line onto the School of the America. I think some of the ways that we see the idea of anarchism and the idea of Christianity overlapping is within the Catholic worker movement. When we talk about the Catholic worker movement, we're talking about a movement where people took personal responsibility to transform their communities, and they see the basis for that in the gospel call to live in justice, the gospel call for nonviolence. When we look at that very specific gospel call, what we see is a need for us to live in community.
We're lucky that we live in community, and we generally have pretty good community support. It's hard for the kids, but they're pretty resilient. Well, let's see, I came to the Worker in '87, and I lived at Dorothy Day House, Catholic Worker in Washington, D.C. We did hospitality to formerly homeless families, and we did a lot of activism. There's just so many issues in the city. We've always been involved in anti-nuclear work. We did a lot of housing advocacy in the mid-'80s.
And the Catholic worker movement was born when Peter and Dorothy met. Peter was a man that at 14 entered the Christian Brothers in France. He was a Frenchman. He came from peasant stock, and I think at 21 he left the Christian Brothers and legally immigrated to Canada and illegally walked across into the U.S. And Peter had wonderful ideas.
When the Irish were Greek scholars, the Irish spoke Greek as well as Irish, but now Irish is Greek to the Irish. Now the Irish shout with the Anglo-Saxons. Business is business. Keep smiling. Watch your steps. The law of supply and demand. Competition is the life of trade. Your dollar is your best friend. So what?
I mean, Ammon would have married Dorothy in a minute. He was in love with her. He was totally in love with her. But she had a great problem with his romantic attachment to her because she felt she couldn't respond to it. She used to say, I like a man to be strong. I like a man to be able to support me morally. Ammon is too tender for me. He's too gentle for me. I could never love him. And he loved me, and I had to constantly reject him. And it's a constant pain in the neck. Of course, at the same time, she admired him very much.
Joan Thomas is Ammon Hennacy's second wife. She was 41 years younger than Ammon.
I mean, I am an anarchist, yes, but it demands a very high degree of spiritual enlightenment, which comes through the grace of God. You know, but for God's grace, I could be a capitalist. I mean, we have to be very thankful, you know, there, but for God's grace, we're not capitalists.
I think one of the other connections that we see is that in the early Christian communities, essentially those early Christian communities following the example of Christ and Paul, were personalist, anarchist communities, autonomous, making decisions collectively for themselves.
We must obey God rather than the state, Peter said, when brought before the Sanhedrin. And that's the first expression of Christian anarchism. If you don't like the word God, then substitute truth. But I'm a theist and a Catholic Christian. Now, some other anarchists might say, no, I can't be an anarchist because I believe in God, or because I'm a member of a hierarchical and authoritarian church.
You know, Jesus didn't act alone. There's a reason Jesus invited 12 people to join him. So I think we need to take that really seriously, that it allows us, to fight the system or continue our activism is you need that support and you need that community. And so David Solnit is a wondrous activist here in the Bay Area, part of Direct Action to Stop the War, helped create Art and Revolution, integrating the arts and culture into activism.
Just as we fight for our time and space right now in our cities, people in 1886 fought to get an 8-hour day for more control of their time in 1886 and won it through a national general strike. And that's why we celebrate May Day all over the world now.
Well, what I do mainly is relief graphics. They're mostly labor-oriented, anti-war oriented, or oriented toward a sane ecology. To be a true pacifist takes guts. And I've known a few. My mother was one. Ammon was always 100%. My parents knew him when he was a socialist and when he was IWW. And he spent his declining years as a Catholic anarchist. I call myself an anarcho-syndicalist as a member of the industrial workers of the world. I believe things should be controlled by the employees.
Ammon Hennacy was the apostle of the one-man revolution.